watch these people every once in a while just to see where they're coming from, and it's so dishonest. MSNBC is, I think, probably worse, and they're both doing horribly in the ratings. I think they're going to be turned off. I don't think they're not doing any ratings. You're doing well on the ratings.
Is meeting their Chinese counterparts next week. Is there anything that they can do to stop April 2nd or to roll back the tariffs that you put on China already?
Well, we can talk, but basically, I call April 2nd. I would have made it April 1st, but I didn't want to be April Fool's Day because then nobody would believe what I said, and they do believe me. April 2nd is going to be Liberation Day for America. We've been ripped off by every country in the world, friend and foe. We've been ripped off on trade. We've been ripped off on military.
Finger motion is doing very well today. It's a sunny day today for the first time, and as long as I've been, I can sit over here. I can lean sideways. Finger motion looks good this morning. So I guess for those of you who were concerned about the dividend, as far as it would have an impact on the price of the stock is concerned, maybe I was right. It wasn't maybe as big a deal, but that's just short term. We'll see what happens. But fingers over $1.60 today, and Nixie got up to 127, I believe. Let me see if this helps. Yeah, I guess that's all right. And then G-Bucks and GDC, these things are picking up a little bit. So maybe our long market nightmare might be coming to a bit of a rewarding phase, maybe. To the gentleman, I forget, PJ or something yesterday. I really didn't mean to insult him I think he did a good trade on RLAIF. I think he did a good trade, but I think for all of you, obviously Finger looks very strong. I would be more in the sell the rip, buy the dip mood with Finger, because they always seem to come in with some selling. But that's like dancing with a woman. How do you count this step? 1, 2, 2, 4, 3. It's an art, not a science. But I think Nixie, there should be news next week, I think. Yeah, could it be longer? Sure, everything always takes longer. Will it be good news? I think so. But will it have a effect on the price? I would argue that unless it's accompanied by major buying, no, it may not. But I think Nixie looks good, and I certainly think it could be the stock that goes first, like early next week. But, we're in a battle. These guys love it when stock prices go up because they have the right given to them by God to sell stock that doesn't exist. And they just look at the Kramers. The Kramers get called in before some young lawyers at the SEC. Little time goes by. The hedge fund lawyers bail them out. Nadich, and hey, we promise we won't do it again. And they immediately do it again. They've been given this permission by God to do it. And so we have to be smart. So I think we have to learn to take profits. And if we miss, in other words, let me talk about Nixie. let's say next week, Nixie follows up on, they've had so many news announcements. Let's say they follow up on their stock buyback program, or they follow up on their business plan and anticipated revenues. This is all in PRs. Or let's say they have an acquisition. Let's say they have more than one acquisition. I don't know. Each time those news pieces come out, the criminals are going to sell. And they're going to try to make you think, and they'll do it pre-market. They'll try to make you think that the news is bad. Well, the one thing we know about Nixie, the guy behind it, more than one guy, one is Brent's son, and he's been burned. I don't know how many times. I mean, there's a guy, by my count, had to get hit over the head 4 times to realize that when a man or a woman comes into his view, takes him to dinner, comes to his office, picks him up in a Rolls Royce, they're just setting up the steel for the shorts. That's just what it is. Guys who live in Switzerland, guys who come from Iran, guys who come from Greece, other people I can't mention, international people, they have no loyalty here to you. We're just a big herd they can cull. And so as the stock goes up, they drive it down. Hey, I showed you yesterday, GTII, just 25,000 shares. If they sold you 25,000 shares at 18, bought it back at 9, they make over $2,000, and they get to do it. Just hit the sell button. It's as simple as that. I mean, there's some fees, but they can make $2,000 in a matter of days. And they do this across a lot of stocks. So what's going to happen with Nixie? I think news could get Nixie running again like it did twice before. So does it go to 4, 5, 6? Yeah, I think it could. Will it? We'll find out. It's like with GME. Every time you got, not you guys specifically, but people out there told me, hey, you got to get into GME. The first time, to my memory, it ran to like 80. Then it ran to, the next time it ran to, I don't know. I don't know if that was the same move, but it ran to 60. Might have been that same move with 80. But then the next time it ran to 35. The next time it ran to low 30s. Next time it seemed to only run to 27 before the selling comes in. So if I'm consistent with my own assessment of how these guys get things under control, maybe Nixie, it went to 12, pulled back, it went, the 8 was part of the 12, but then it went to 5, 6, pulled back. What does it do this time? Does it only go to 3, 4? I don't think so. I think Nixie has a chance to go back to the 8, 10, 12 range. But what do you do? It's tricky because 3 or 4 months ago, there were discussions that Nixie could go to 20, 25, 30 higher in a squeeze. So do you hang on and try to get that maximum, or do you sell? And the way I see Nixie, I don't think our volume has anything to do with it. I don't think our buying or our selling, when news comes out, I expect, based on their press releases, at least 2 pieces of news, maybe 3. So what do you do? Do you sell or hold? Until we see the news and until we see the price action, because you can always change your mind. My view is if Nixie goes up with volume, I'm probably going to sell it I don't have, I have a very small position in my IRA, so don't listen to me. But I'm probably going to sell it when there's volume and take the easy trade. But it's up to you. Maybe sell part, maybe you wait with the whole thing. Anyway, I think Nixie is as soon as next week, as soon as next week. So that gives you today, maybe Monday morning to look into it. Railtown, which we've gone over, and I'll try to go over again with any questions instead of pointing out that you can go to the website, you can see their presentation, and you can go to their news stories, but I'll go through it again. I think Railtown could be next week as well, but with Railtown, I think it's much more that there's a lot of parties involved, and there's probably a lot of lawyers involved, and there's the oversight, the regulatory regime in Canada. So you're waiting on lawyers, which is like waiting on Godot, only you pay for the lawyers, you don't pay for Godot. You're waiting on regulators, which is like going to the DMV and trying to get your license renewed. So realistically, whilst I say Railtown could be next week, and I expect it could because it's been over 30 days, I would give it equal chance that it's 2 weeks from now or even 3 weeks from now. But just to be safe, I would try to buy that today if I had money. And then the GDCs, the G-Buckses, and the ZJYLs are a different kettle of fish. They all seem to be grabbing a bid. I think they're worth a punt. And then what did I leave out? Oh, Finger. Finger looks really strong. I mean, it's over $1.60. It looks very nice. I guess the only thing I can add there's enough volume in that stock that you can practice a little bit of sell the rip, buy the dip. Maybe just with 10% of your position. You don't have to do it with all of it. I think Finger, in terms of news coming out, the only thing we can really plan on reasonably is right around April 15th. Earnings should be there. But, there's 2 or 3 other things that could happen more quickly. And the stock certainly is showing strength. Can you please explain bid-ask volumes? Is it buy the bid and sell the ask, or the opposite? That's funny because it's funny because it used to matter. I don't think it matters anymore. If for example, if I worked at a firm where we made a market in a stock, I might be able to get a price in between. I might be able to give an order to my trading desk to buy at the bid and actually have a chance of having it go off. But now it's all computerized. So the bid, I don't know. Let me see what the last bid on Finger is. Well, it's trading at 161. This is a little delayed, so I'm using Yahoo. The bid is 118 for 200. And the ask is wow, 190. That's showing some strength, guys. That is showing some strength. 190 for 200. And the last trade is 161. Finger looks good. Finger looks good. But Bill, that's what it is right now. If you went in at the bid, you wouldn't buy any stock. If you went in between, if you went in at 190 to buy, they only have an obligation to fill 200 shares at 190. So let's say you would put in a bid to buy 1,000 shares at 190. In the past world, you'd get 200 and the ask would go up. That doesn't happen anymore, really, except when the stock's strong. And this is strong. This is strong. Let me just get an updated, see where it is. Yeah, 118 by 190. To me, this means they don't really want to buy any stock. They'll sell you some. In other words, they don't want to sell any stock to you. And they will sell it to you at this massive price. But anyway, so the one day I'm trying to explain this to you, the spread is as wide as Senator Craig's visit to the men's room in Arizona airport. What's your question? Is buy the bid? No, you're buying the ask, but you become the bid. So you're bidding. It's like when you're at Sotheby's, you bid on the artwork. The ask is another word for the ask is offer. What's the offer? So someone's willing to sell it at $1.90, 200 shares, and someone's willing to buy it for 118, 200 shares. I have a feeling right now, if you put it in at 190, they'd fill you at $1.80, at $1.75, because they don't want it to go. They don't want it to run. They'd like you to sell down here because they're, as Ham would say, they're trapped. They're trapped. So this isn't a good example to explain the question. The volumes, I think, are all fake nowadays. You don't really see, the selling is almost endless. Is it buy the bid and sell the ask, or the opposite? What Ham says is buy the dip, sell the rip. So he's just talking about the stock price. If you went in modern markets, small markets, to buy at the bid, the only way, and that's what I was hoping to show you, but it's hard to show you with this example. But if you went, I mean, maybe a better example to show it to you with is there is no bid and ask on it, but GTII's last trade is 15 cents for just GTII. 15 cents. So if you buy that, it's in the expert market. Oh, it does show a bid and an ask. The bid is 0.0803. It doesn't say how many shares. And the ask is 0.0. 899. So this is there any volume today? 500 shares. So it's very low volume. So if you buy GTII this morning at 15, immediately the bid is 8 cents. So if you had to sell it, you're immediately losing money. Now they have an ask, which is my understanding of the expert market, this is voluntarily. They don't have to show this. But there's an ask at 9 cents, a bid at 8 cents. So if let's use this bid and ask. You go buy GTII at 9 cents. Immediately, if you were to sell it, you're down whatever that percentage is. That's where they make their money all day long. And they're willing to do it. But what makes the modern market different is, in fact, if you put in your order to buy at 0.0899, you'd be executed below it because they don't want to show their weakness to the upside. But you buy, somebody is bidding for GTII 0.0803, and somebody is offering 0.0899 for you to get involved. If you came and bid the same, the only way that's going to happen, in my opinion, is if this ask drops to 0.083. So when you get filled, in most cases, is when the price of the stock comes down. So it's really not something you want to do. You don't, in my judgment, if you want to buy the stock, buy it. You'll probably get filled in the middle. But to go in at the bid, I think you just automatically become you become the other side of the trade for a professional, and they'll drop the whole thing down, and maybe it's on its way down, and you get filled. In these lower price stocks, I think that's the wrong way to do it. But if you're dollar cost averaging and you figure you're doing it over time, why not? So it's a different. It depends what your goals are. Bid ask volumes, is it buy the bid and sell the ask, or the opposite? I've been told it can be either. I'm not sure I answered your question. But I did the best I could. Ham has a finger G, but okay, go over to Ham's call. I'll sign off. You guys go over to Ham's call. He didn't let me know today, so. I don't know how to call into his call, so. You guys go over. Go at 12:30. I'll sign off at 12:30. On Nix, they have to cover 2.4 million real shorts, and the squeeze is set at a maximum of 256. There's only 3 million in the flow. Yeah, I think that's the thing with Nix. I think if the news is solid and at the same time it brings in buyers in volume, Nixie really has the chance to, like you say, just the real short. Nixie has a chance. I just don't want people to get hooked on these numbers, but Nixie could go to $20, $25, $30. in a run-up. I'm just tempering that because twice before Nixie has traded quite a bit of stock and didn't break through. But yeah, it could be a lot of fun. It'd be a lot of fun. 1x2 in real time for Finger. So Finger's starting to move. Finger is I don't know how to get the real. I guess I can get the bid and ask on OTC markets. Oh, I see. I don't see a bid and ask there. So let me go to NASDAQ. It's just taking a second, David. The bid is, I see the last trade $1.62 on NASDAQ, and the bid is 165. Nope, that's the high. I don't see the bid here. I don't know. I can look, if I go over here, I can look at the live, but I might lose you. It's the only thing. Of course, it takes too long. I see 162. I see the bid at 162 and the ask at 163. So that's not as dramatic. That's not as dramatic as what Yahoo was showing. 162 by 163. All right, so Ham's going to be giving you a call in 4 minutes. So I would go over there if you want to hear G-Bucks and Finger and other things. I might just stay on for those who are still here or for those who will listen to this later. Yeah, I won't sign it. You know where you can go listen to him. You have to go to Twitter. So that's what I would do. I'm not trying to. I didn't know he was going with a call, but since some people will be leaving, maybe I'll take a second here to show you a couple of things on. Everything's interrelated. Your future, oil and gas, energy, oil and gas, gold, silver, the stock markets, debt. It's all interrelated. And what's going on right now in the Middle East and in the Ukraine and in the news is, I think, Trump. I'm horrified by what Netanyahu is doing with Trump's help to an entire people. If you could just put your imagination on and imagine that Jews were in Gaza and Arabs were in Israel proper, imagine your reaction. It's just that somehow we've dehumanized Palestinians. They're not human. Well, I only in the Old Testament does God treat human beings with such disdain? I guess there's a different covenant. And I guess Christianity operates under a new covenant. I don't know. I'm not a theologian, but I don't think God wants us slaughtering people. It's called genocide. So anyway, I don't like what Trump's doing with that. Certainly what he's doing in Yemen is a little frightening, because Iran and Russia and China, but more particularly Russia and Iran, have these hypersonic missiles that can MIRV. And as far as I know, we don't have a defense. And I brought that up with my dad when he was alive, a friend of mine that's, he's retired now, but extremely high up. And they both told me, don't worry about it. We've got more weapons than you know of. And hopefully that's true. But at least in theory, they could send just one hypersonic missile, have its nose break into a few parts, take out the Harry S. Truman aircraft carrier, take out one or two destroyers, take out the fuel, take out 5 or 6 ships. Oh my gosh. The United States, our standing in the world would plummet. It would plummet. So I'm nervous about that. I also see what he's doing, at least I see it, I might be wrong, by taking up the Saudi war in Yemen, basically. We're giving the prince a reason to side with us, even though most of the Arab world is furious at Israel. I think Israel's at peril of its very existence. But of course, God's on their side and will make sure that the land from the Wadi in Egypt all the way to the Euphrates and down into Saudi Arabia belongs to the chosen people. I think it's a really bad reading of what God asked of his chosen people. I think chosen means expecting more, as best I can tell. Expecting more. It's a tough path. And I think it has been a tough path. Harder work, better brains, better education, hewing strictly to God's commandments and laws. I think that's what he meant. He expected more. But I don't know. That's, as my dad said, I don't know what I'm talking about. Finger is now 162.94. Wow. So anyway, I'm not all that pleased with what Trump is doing there, and I think it risks our standing in the world, and it risks his standing. Having said that, moving away from that, I think the fact that he's opening up to Russia, that he's coming clean with data. He's talking about Greenland, Canada, the Panama Canal, and of course there's one in Nicaragua, and I think they're even talking about one maybe in Mexico. But he's sort of writ large. It's the Monroe Doctrine. Get out of our part of the world. And I think Trump has vision to see that what's coming in the world is a new realignment and it's probably over resources. This is what I've been arguing a long time. I don't have his intelligence in the sense of CIA intelligence, his data. But I think that's what he's seeing. I think that's why he's talking about Canada, Greenland. I'll show you a map here in a second. I think the world, the true item that matters in the world is energy. And I was listening to a lecture where I got some of these charts from by Art Berman, and he pointed out, and I remembered it once he pointed it out, but he said, "What is energy?" And I thought, well, we know what energy is. And the fact is, there's no definition of energy. We don't really know what it is. But energy is how we do work. And debt is a claim on future work. Debt, in a very real sense, is a claim on future energy. And if there's not enough cheap energy, there'll always be, just like there's whales still left. The whales were on they probably still are actually, because of Japan. Two reasons: Japan, they kill them, and secondly, Fukushima is probably killing the whales and the sharks. But anyway, it's too many things to bring in. But whale oil, blubber, was sought after until I mean, humankind has always used bitumen and oil throughout history, but particularly in the United States, but in parts of Europe like the UK, inventions came along which used oil. I mean, it was kerosene at first, and it was lamps, and the lamps replaced blubber and whale oil. So the kerosene, some from gas, but some from what Rockefeller called rock oil, I think he called it. But anyway, it was just taking the gas, basically, the kerosene, and selling it for fuel, lighting. But as machines came into place, from the automobile to the cotton gin to assembly lines, my argument has been for a long time, it was my idea, although I've seen other people mention it, and Art Berman just mentioned it when I watched, but when I was studying oil over the last decades, it's very interesting. The use of oil for machinery matches the end of slavery. And I just think it's simply that there was an alternative. One of Art Berman's slides shows that one single barrel of oil, using modern day labor, one single barrel of oil is equivalent to 4.5 years of human labor. It's just been the most wonderful bounty ever. And I want to show you one chart. Oh, it's not here. Well, okay. I thought I had a map here. I'll show it to you, but I'll read your comments first, because I'm sure it'll erase them. But here's one. I've pointed out to you many times. Let me take bow tee off. This graph goes back to 1890, and I don't know how. It's from Art Berman's computer. I don't know how they came up with that price back in 1890, but the red line shows oil as a percent of energy consumption. And it was pretty low at the turn of the century. And then I'm having a hard time reading those time frames. But as we turned into the 1900s, it's hard for me to read it. We started increasing our use of oil. But you can see when Elvis Presley ruled, oil hit the highest percentage it ever had as its usage in our energy complex is concerned. And in today's prices, oil went to $121 a barrel shortly thereafter. And you can see how high oil has gone here in this century. But look what's interesting. Oil as a percentage of our overall energy consumption is way down. So his comment is the end of the oil age began with the price shocks of the 1970s. Oil consumption has fallen from 48% to 36% of total energy usage. It's an interesting chart. Here's another one. This comes from another source, MarketWatch, but this chart I just throw up there to show you what's happening in the UK, and why we're so lucky to be in North America. Makes me wonder why we're selling our natural gas offshore. We have a bounty of natural gas, and wow, finger motion is 167. 166.99. Are you out of your mind? 166.99. And so Ham, if it can get to $2, Ham will be making money on his calls. One presumes. 210, he'll make money. Anyway, so the UK gas price, this is a couple years ago. Look what it is, $117 an MCF. And we were paying $10. That changes your standard of living. And the only reason I put this up here, this can happen worldwide. This can happen here. I think we have a lot of gas. I wish we would just keep it for ourselves and your grandchildren, but it's not how it works. So that's just one chart. And then I'll show you this. This is he puts this up as an energy transition. His point is biomass, that gray line on the bottom that goes from 1860, I think, all the way to today. Biomass is essentially wood, grass, whatever else that human beings have burnt, used to burn and still burn for cooking food and for warmth. We're at 165 in finger. But notice, as coal came in, biomass didn't go down. Coal became the go-to fuel in war in particular, and on ships, as Winston Churchill made that decision. Tanks, he invented the tank, they say, but he converted the Royal Navy from wood to coal. Sorry, I'm getting that wrong. From coal to oil. From coal to oil. So anyway, the coal through I can't read those years, but coal was very important for quite a bit of the Industrial Revolution, and then Churchill moved shipping to oil, and oil came in, and it slowly at first. I'm going to assume oil came in at around 1910, but my eyesight is really bad, and there's. So anyway, but what happened to coal? Oil didn't replace coal. The usage of coal has continued. And if there's one thing we could do for climate change, it would be to stop burning coal, but that won't happen. All right, so then oil came on through World War II, and then we came home, I guess, and natural gas kicked in. And then I suppose it was FDR, and then the United States driving it, but developing around the world. Hydro came in, dams with the World Bank, the IMF. Damming came in, the Nile. I can't think of all over Africa, all over Europe, all over, I don't know about India. But anyway, hydropower came in, and all over the United States. But look, when oil comes in, coal usage continues upward. When natural gas comes in, oil's usage continues upward. When hydro comes on, natural gas usage increases. And then look at hydro. It increases as nuclear power comes on. And then way up there is solar and wind. But the point of this is this myth that we're going to turn off oil, turn off gas, hell, even turn off coal. It's not going to happen. And we cannot replace all of this energy usage with solar panels. That's the point of this chart. Let's see what this one says. Oh, it's not showing you. All right, there it is. Finger motion is 165.94. All right, so according to the International Energy Agency, solar and wind are expected to account for 10% of the world's energy supply in 2050. Nuclear energy is expected to account for 6%. Fossil fuels, basically, will account for 66% of total energy supply in 2050. So the percentage use of fossil goes down, you can see with the white line. But biomass stays flat, coal slightly declining. I would argue that coal, we're also at a point of peak good coal, at least in the United States. There is such a thing as the best coal, 166 on finger. But anyway, coal is estimated to go down a little bit, but look at oil. Look at oil as a percentage. It's not saying the supply won't go down. Oil is still the most important piece of our energy mix, and right behind it is natural gas. It doesn't go down. And then look at nuclear power. This is the panacea for the future. It doesn't go anywhere. I personally think we should stop. If I had my choice, I'd well, I guess the technology is getting better in nuclear power, but we're not even told about the risks of nuclear. Coal, it'd be good to stop using coal. We're at 167 in finger motion, 1.6666. And then there's hydro, bioenergy, which is corn, and other renewables. Look at the renewables. This is where our government policy has turned us, is to renewables. It's not the future. Let me see what this chart says. Oh, this is for talking about renewables. Renewables cannot substitute for fossil energy. Wind, solar, hydro, nuclear are only used for electric power generation. Delivered electric power is only 19% of US energy consumption projected by 2050. All the other energy has to come from somewhere else. Let me read that again. Wind, solar, hydro, nuclear are only used for electric power, and demand for electric power, usage of electric power, will represent 20% of US consumption by 2050. Anyway, just interesting points. There is a chart, there's a map I wanted. How do you go to Ham's call? What is his Twitter name? His Twitter name is he changed it. That's why I don't know it. It's at Ham 5959 shorts. No, it's at Ham 59591 shorts. At Ham 59591 shorts. At Ham 59591 shorts. At Ham 59591 shorts. Go to his conference call. Go to his conference call. He didn't tell me. He didn't invite me. I didn't know. I apologize for going live at the same time. I didn't mean to. It wasn't intentional. But please go to his call. You can watch this later. Finger motion is trading beautifully, and you should go listen to him on that. Finger motion is 168. It's up 22 cents. So go listen to him. Ham's not, well, that's an interesting point, Kevin. And I forget where I heard it, but I took notes on it, and I was going to talk about it one of those times that I signed off early, then I forgot to go back to it. But the modern world, and I wonder where I can find the presentation. The modern world is based on four items which you cannot have without fossil fuels: steel, concrete, fertilizer, and plastics. Steel, concrete, fertilizer, and plastics. So it's interesting you bring that up. Lou Grosso looks like selling 1350 finger for 220 G bucks and 208 finger for 115 nicks is going to be a huge mistake on my part. I don't think so. I don't think so. This is exciting right now because it's up today in finger, but don't worry about it. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't think finger's going to go to $2 today, but it could. It could. It's behaving really well. But I expect those guys to come in and sell it off, Lou. And to me, finger, which is incredible move. I think finger can double from here. That is a fantastic trade. But I don't know about G Bucks. I think G Bucks will. It's completely a squeeze play. Here's G Bucks. You've got a company just like ZJYL and GDC that a handful of people essentially own the float. There's a big short position, and G Bucks has a product, and it's expanding into this place and that place, and it's going to revolutionize, and it's it's great. 167 for finger. But what ostensibly happened with G Bucks is some small shorts got trapped in it at $1.25, and it ran to 10, I guess. And now whoever they are, have sold it off. My opinion on G Bucks is there hasn't been enough time for those guys to get out of trouble, but the price being down has helped them. So that's why I personally am a little bit, But if you're trading for a squeeze, now's the time to own G Bucks. It's much better than $8 to buy it down here. It's trading better. When I first heard the story, I wish I'd bought it then. Goldman Sachs was involved. I had no way of confirming it. I still don't. What I heard is as much as $250 million was coming into the company for a new business strategy. Well, they announced 100 million, so the information I heard was pretty much spot on. 100 isn't 200, but it's a big number. So they announced an LOI, letter of intent, from Abu Dhabi, which will go hard on a case-by-case basis as they acquire companies. So they're not going to go do a toxic financing. They're not going to get destroyed. And at least on the surface of it, it looks like they have all the money they need. The things we don't know is what's the price for this money. We don't know that. And we don't know what companies they're buying. We don't know that. And a little bit on the skeptical side, when you hear about share buybacks or letters of intent for big money, lots of times in the past anyway, those are gimmicks. So Wall Street traders, shorts, are going to, sell the stock and try to make it seem like bad news. But if they execute on any of that, G Bucks could take off. So I like G Bucks. If I had money, I would buy down here in G Bucks. And you might be surprised how high G Bucks can go. But if you're asking timing, nobody knows timing. And the longer it takes, the more discouraged you're going to get. On Nixie, I think, as I explained earlier, I think Nixie, let me see where Nixie is trading, by the way. It's not having a bad day either, by any stretch. or it wasn't. Yeah, it's 221.5, so I guess it's down a little bit. But earlier it was 227. Nixie's breaking out. The chart looks great in Nixie. And, you know, day traders who do not have to have stock. This is what you're up against every single day in these stocks. As we put up real money, day traders come in with no money and they sell stock that doesn't exist, hoping to cover lower, and they think they're heroes. And it works. It works over and over again. It's great if you have permission to break the rules. It's great. It's just bloody great. I promise not to get frustrated. Nixie went up in October to $12 pre-market on 50 million shares. It then traded at $8 and it closed that day at 5 or 6. Over time, they got it down. Then just a few weeks ago, Nixie traded up to 6, is my memory, on 60 million shares in volume, and then it petered off. I don't think those trades came out of nowhere, in the sense that, I mean, they kind of came out of nowhere. That's the wrong way to put it. I don't think those trades, those volumes, were just not for nothing. They signal something. And remember, Nixie is the result of the complicated logic constellation of companies and a merger into Recruiter.com. Recruiter.com had huge naked short positions, huge. So they're all in Nixie now. And as you know, Nixie already did their merger, finalized their merger. I don't know if the documents are all finished, to buy Just Got to Have It. 100 million in revenue, 40% of that. No, that's not right. I don't think it's 100 million in revenue. I think it's 10 million in revenue, 10 million in revenue. 40% of that is profit. And then they announced they are going to do more acquisitions. Their aim is to get to $1 billion in size. And so, yeah, you're going to say it's a mistake, but you're putting perfection on your lap, and that's unfair to yourself. I think Nixie, I'll just predict, Nixie next week will put some sort of announcement out, either regarding projections or their share buyback, because we're still waiting for that second foot shoe to drop. And I think they owe us at least one announcement on an acquisition or the finalization of the one they talked about that was going to be finalized in February. So I don't think you've made a mistake. I think G-Bucks at these prices, in the short run, you risk a little bit. If the stock quiets down, maybe you lose 20%, 30% on your money if you lose patience. But I think there's another shot at a squeeze. But that's a gamble, you know. You're gambling that because the squeeze could be tens of dollars. It could be massive. But the odds of it, lower odds. But I think it's still there for G-Bucks. The surprise is still there. But I would give it 50-50, you know. I don't know of any news that's going to suddenly change that, but the big players are still there. The big game plan is still there. The trap shorts are still there, so I can't tell you when on G-Bucks. But I think Nixie next week, if they do make an announcement that gives you some clarity on how they're going to buy back shares, because that's what they promised, and maybe gives you some clarity on what their acquisition was and what revenue, and just go back and read the press release. They're talking about having, or it might have been Chris's Twitter, but they're talking about having 20 million a month in revenue. We don't know the price they're paying. We don't know the price we're paying. So it's the only thing. But I think Nixie next week, following week, it could have a run to $6. So you're in it right here at 2. That's 3x. You triple your money, and come back and buy Finger if you want at that time. Finger, I think, is a double, but Ham, you can listen to the replay of Ham's call. Ham's really confident that thing is going to squeeze. So, but I think you have time, Lou. Nixie to me is the one that could move as soon as Wednesday next week. And then you have a tough decision. Do you triple your money there, go to Finger, or do you try to get 10 times your money in Nixie? And I think that's what it'll look like when it starts trading up. It'll look like you can get $20 a share. And there's no perfect answer. You'll never get an A+ on your trading. But if you feel this way right now, what I would do, if Nixie goes next week, you can't, in my opinion, you can't hop from horse to horse to horse. You can do it a little bit, and you can do it with partial positions. Or if you have limited funds, you got to pick one horse. Of course, you could do that. But I think it would be a mistake to sell Nixie now, just because other stocks are moving. Could I be wrong? Sure, I'm making a projection. Projections are always wrong. But I think you can triple your money and fix in Nixie next week. It could take longer. I mean, I'm like I say, it's a projection, not a promise. But so I don't think you've made a mistake. But today it looks like it feels that way. I understand that. I like Finger. I'm not trying to speak against Finger. I'm just saying I don't think you made a bad trade. Why can't I? I can't get a quote. I can't get a quote. I can't get a quote. Oh, there, view. All right, so Fingers 157. 157. I don't think you made a mistake, Luke, but I know it feels tough. The waiting is the hardest part. Hey, Giuseppe. Hey, Barbara. Hey, Frank. Hey, Barbara. Oh, God. I'll give you Ham's Twitter handle. Why don't you, Vanden Plays, search Finger Motion, search G-Bucks, and you're going to see them. 161 for finger right now. That's a good answer too. Well, I'll tell you the answer. I don't want to do it now because we're during trading hours, but maybe one morning or one night. But the Temple Mount, I think, is the answer. The gentleman yesterday, Donnie, said it. The translation of the Sumerian texts by Zechariah Sitchin, which he did, a guy, I think he was born in Russia, but it might have been in Israel. But he's a long time student. He wrote several books. I read 2 of them, but I listened to his lectures. And I don't know if his analysis is perfect or not. He thinks the pyramids were sort of a landing guideline lights for ships which landed in Jerusalem, landed on that Temple Mount. And I don't know. I think the pyramids had something either to do with energy or with consciousness, possibly. But anyway, something we've lost, whatever it was, we've lost to time. And the Catholics burnt all the records in Mexico. Why would they burn everything? But they did, all the paper records. So just think of all the information that got lost in that. But hey, can't change that either. 160 for finger. But his view is, because Jerusalem's an odd location, his view is it was the landing strip for the Anunnaki. It's the huge rocks that were there to bear the weight of takeoff and landing. So that was the answer to that question I was looking for. And it's not, you're not wrong, and the other, and somebody else answered not wrong either. It's just, why there? Why not, some other city? Obviously, Giuseppe, that I think this is true. Muhammad went to heaven, I think it was Muhammad, on a horse named Barak from there. And it makes it a pretty important city to the Muslims. I think you will have time to do it myself. It might be at $2, but if you sell, I don't know, pick Nixie. If you sell Nixie at 5 or 6, yes, you're paying more, but you're getting more shares. It's not perfect. Muhammad traveled to Jerusalem. Yeah. G-Bucks could take off before finger as well. Yeah, I think so. But I don't. Yes, that's how I think about G-Bucks. But if I had to put odds on it, I'd say 50-50. If I had to put odds on Nick's moving, I'd have to say 70 to 80%. And if I had to put odds on Nick's going above $10, then I'd be 50-50. Thank you, Chris. Bob, let me look at Railtown. Why don't you take me down to Railtown? Wow, I didn't see that. You're right. It's 28 cents. I hope that gentleman was able to buy back. He made a, yeah, I don't see the volume. Oh, wow, there it is. I do see it. 138,000. That's pretty high. It's pretty high. You are a arsehole. Whatever happened to trade between nations? I know. What did happen with that, Kevin? That was the Clinton argument, and now we go to war. I think, personally, I think it's about the dollar. It's about the financial system. It's about Israel. If you don't recognize that the United States foreign policy, at least in the Middle East, is controlled by, or the question is, what is best for Israel? Then, you know, you're not watching it. It is possible. I used to think, you know, I'd be so frustrated with Hillary Clinton. And then I started thinking, is she the tiger or is she riding the tiger? And it's possible Israel's riding the tiger and it's our policy. It's what we want to do. I don't know. But in any event, we, at a minimum, have taken over the lying, conniving, destructive, murderous, acquisitive position of the British. And I don't know what we've gotten for it. We're in debt. We gave up the airport in Afghanistan next to the world's largest deposit of copper, and China has that airport now. The contracts for oil in Iraq went to the Italians, the Russians, Germans, I think, and Japanese. We didn't. Syria, it looks like it's pretty much going to Israel and maybe a little bit to Russia. I don't know what loyalty we really have in the rest of the Middle East. And then the brilliant attack of Gaddafi, we've left a failed state at war with women being put into slavery and children. And this is from a woman who said that women's rights are human rights. That's right up there with our nation's got to eat. Anyway, we haven't gotten much for the trillions of dollars we've spent. A lot of people have gotten wealthy. Samantha Powers is worth $65 million. The Kagans are the Kagan-Newland, extremely wealthy. Blackfield or Blackwater, extremely wealthy. The defense contractors wealthy. But how have we made the world better? All we've done has been killing people. But we used to argue, just like you're saying, that the world would be better off with trade. I think what's happening is the banks made as much money down that avenue as they could, and they want to keep the party going for themselves and these hedge funds. And my argument is they control the US foreign policy, they control our military, they control our media. And I would go further that Israel either controls our foreign policy or we use Israel as a spearhead. And I mean, a logical question I'll leave out there. I'm not going to bring it up because it just gets me in trouble. These other groups hate Jews and teach their children to hate, kill Jews. If you've missed your house to launch at Israel, expect the worst. Well, I'm not sure that's true. Not sure that's true. And Michael, if you're open-minded, you may not want to see it, but just go to some alternative media and watch interviews of young Israelis and what they think about Palestinians, and then ask yourself who is taught to hate whom. My experience with a lot of friends and colleagues from the Middle East, very little hatred towards the Jews. One guy very close to, he would say, you know, he'd get all mad and go on a stream because he's Palestinian. And he had on his desk a bullet. I don't know where it was made, but it said made in the USA. And next to it was a picture of a boy pissing his pants as a Israeli soldier had the machine gun pointing at the little Palestinian boy. But then, very oddly, he has all that anger, just like you and I would at if we were of a generation. I was too young, but we might have an anger at Johnson over the Vietnam War, but we'd still love our country. He did and still does have very close relationships and friendships with Jews. And so his anger, I would submit to you, is more about what's happening to Palestinians, and I share that anger, but it's not a hatred of Jews. And I really don't think they teach, I really don't think, it's just a statement you're making, you don't back it up. I don't think they teach their sons and daughters to hate Jews. I think Israelis, certain part of the Israeli population, do that all on their own. Israel violates the truces. Israel violates the norms of human treatment. Israel violates UN charters. Israel violates the security and the sanctity of a man's home. It's Israel who's in the wrong. Why did Finger pull the S3? I don't know that answer, Dustin. I think the answers could be any of the following. The filing got stale. Roth Capital may have signed an exclusive financing deal with Finger and said, we don't want that deal done. Thirdly, there might be somebody that wants to invest in Finger, and said, we don't want that deal, it's too dilutive or whatever. And so you got to make your choices. Fourth, the company might have said, you know what, let's focus on what we're doing. We'll revisit this and we'll do it again down the road. Those are the reasons I can come up with. There might be another one. I don't think it's the last time you'll hear about a dividend from Finger. GDC looks good. GDC does look good. I can't even type with. $270. You're right, Big JR. It's up 35 cents. To me, GDC looks like a trade. It looks like it's coming to life. These stocks, nobody rings the bell. So typically, if you've bought them and they drift downward, what I would do, I don't have a liquid account anymore, but I would buy more, and so, yeah, GDC looks great, and that can run. Yeah, why? See, it's so weird. A whole bunch of messages are gone. So I may have missed a bunch of messages. Doesn't a wide range on a bid and ask indicate short manipulation? Yes, most of the time. But it also can be that there's an order imbalance, which doesn't ever seem to happen anymore, but it can be an order imbalance. Back when there were specialists and market makers, they would open the bid because they just didn't want to trade while they were sorting their orders. At the end of the day, they expand it because they walk away from their desk and they didn't want their computers. You have to leave when you're well, see, I don't know if these new fake market makers have that rule, but it used to be, if you were a market maker, you had to at least accept some trades. You had to make a market, so they would expand it, and they'd be willing to buy 100 shares or sell 100 shares, but it would be at a wide price. G-Bucks published 2 new filings. CPS 71. That's why I think Finger, for the nimble, sell the rip, buy the dip, sell the rip, buy the dip, but never do it with your whole position. Let me look at GDC. G-Bucks. G-Bucks. Israel has been a horrible neighbor. Well, I think if you read, and it's tough to read about it, but I think there's no question that the Palestinians, they don't have anything like AIPAC. They don't have any. I think it's Jeffrey Sachs that says that Israel is the biggest threat to free speech in the United States. But there is a Jewish, I don't know if it's Jewish or if it's Israeli. There's an Israeli lobby in the United States that's extremely powerful. There is no countervailing Palestinian lobby. And that's a mistake that the Palestinians have made. The Jewish nation, the Israeli nation, has been very focused on what they're trying to accomplish since before Israel was founded. And I don't think you can say that about the Palestinians. Their goals have been diffuse. There's been interscene bickering. Uh, uh, and there has been sabotage of what what they've tried to do. But at the same time, we hail our rebellion against the British. And of course, we say it's about taxes and the price of tea, but it was more than that. But imagine being born as a man, a boy, and you don't have a passport. You can't travel. You're full of energy, and you go up and down your homeland, Gaza Strip, which is surrounded by walls that would make other dictators stand in awe. There's the oppressing party, the Israelis, from time to time come in and mow the lawn. They come in and kill people. They mow the lawn. Imagine if you're going through that. And yes, I'm not saying that launching a bottle rocket or launching some sort of missiles that you purchased from somewhere into Israel isn't evil. It is evil. It's wrong. But what would you do? What would you do? Would you rebel? The people in the horrible, evil ghettos in Warsaw, they rebelled. Not always, but they rebelled. We rebelled, and we had the whole continent, but we rebelled. I don't know. There's something in the human being to fight oppression and fight being locked in an open air prison. It's apartheid, and every father, every mother wants their children to have a better life than they do. How do you do that in Gaza? How do you do it in Gaza? And now Israel has completely, and Trump's doing it too, and it disgusts me. They have completely demolished Gaza. I can't imagine that God doesn't see that as evil. But it's not up to me. All right, give bucks. I don't see any news on give bucks. So let me go to Edgar. Hmm. Why are things not easy. They've changed it, I guess. GBUX. Here. I don't see anything filed on GBucks. I don't see. It's at 3. AGNC pays a 14% yield. All right, let's look at that one. Let me write it down first. AGNC. $10. And they have earnings of 93 cents. They have a dividend of $1.44. Goes ex-dividend March 31st. Plenty of volume, 10 million shares. I don't know what they do. 58 monthly dividends later, and this ultra high yielder still isn't a dividend stock you can count on. That's a lot of dividends. Given that REITs are it's a REIT, are designed to pass income on to investors, it seems logical to believe that the stock, with its 14% dividend, would fit perfectly into a dividend investor's portfolio. That's just not the case, and 58 consecutive monthly dividends don't change that fact. What does AGNC investment do? The company tells you what it does. Quote, favorable long-term stockholder returns with a substantial yield component, unquote. That's very different from a company that has a goal of providing investors with dividend income. For example, another REIT says they're committed to providing with dependable income. Take a step deeper into AGNC's Investments Investor Services site, and you'll see a review of the REIT's performance. The metric listed is total return, which assumes that all dividends get reinvested. This is the vital key in assessing whether or not AGNC investment is a good fit for your portfolio. The truth is that AGNC investment has a strong track record when it comes to total return. The company proudly highlights that its total return is 10% annualized since its IPO in 2008 through last year. This is a perfectly fine way for an investor to get exposure to the mortgage sector, and investors focused on asset allocation would be wise to consider it. However, that doesn't make it a reliable income stock. Any investor who is trying to live off their dividend income should think carefully before they are lured by the siren song of 14% dividend yield. The proof is in AGNC's investments dividend record. Most income investors are looking for a dividend that gets paid reliably and grows over time. The reason is pretty simple. People are living off the income. The 58 consecutive monthly dividend payments that AGNC investment has paid at the same level since 2020 sound reasonable, but don't forget the pernicious effect of inflation, which eats away of the value of money. Well, all right. There was a massive spike in inflation following the corona. All right, whatever. There's more to this story, however, because the streak of reliable dividends only goes back to 2020. What happened prior to that point is just as important as what happened afterward. AGNC's investment dividend rose quickly after its IPO and then started a long downtrend. An investor who bought this REIT with the goal of generating a reliable income stream would have been left with less income and less capital since the stock price has fallen along with the dividend. That represents a terrible outcome for most income investors. So how does the total return come out to be positive? The answer is that AGNC investment has paid out more in dividends than the decline in the value of its stock price. Thus, dividend reinvestment has resulted in long-term growth of capital. If you spent that dividend, you would have still ended up with more income over time than you lost in capital. But that's a very nuanced way to look at a dividend investment. And this is why most dividend investors think differently. There's nothing wrong with buying AGNC. This is not a knock on AGNC. It is well respected, but it doesn't necessarily make a good choice for an investor trying to live off the dividends they generate from their portfolio. And holding the dividend static for years isn't proof that you can rely on the dividend to help you pay your bills. This ultra-high yielder just isn't a dividend stock you can count on for that. Anyway, that's the motley fool. I don't know. I would trust Kit Kitteridge more than the motley fool. Let me see if I can. I want to show you one thing. I don't know if this will come up. Yeah, I just want to show you this. Let me get Kit. That's all right. This is the New World Order, possibly. And I don't know exactly who drew this map. Let me see if I can take Kit down and we can see who it comes from. But it's the tricks. Turkey, Russia, India, China, Korea used to be the BRICS. But Russia let me look. I can't read that key. Let me expand it on my. I can't read it here either. All right. Well, I can't read what the blue and the red means, but what I see here is what Trump is trying to do. You see, North America is all blue, and a big part is Central and South America, the Monroe Doctrine. The sort of purple, brownish color, that's the BRICS. Europe and Turkey are NATO, and so they maybe are with us. Parts of Africa maybe are with us. Australia, certainly. But then you've got Russia and you've got China. And that's we're going to have a tripolar world. We're going to have, and I guess the brown is the BRICS: India, Russia, China, Brazil. Anyway, the whole point of this, and I'm showing it to you, is our world is going to be different. It's going to be aligned differently in the years ahead. What do I think about high yield dividend? What do I think? What do you think about high yield dividend? I think they're good. But you got to be careful with high yield. There's a reason the yields are high. That's all you got to remember. There's a reason the yields are high. But I think it's important to look at yield. And DeValio, he gives up. I don't know. I didn't see your question. I didn't see your question. Yeah, Trump isn't, I don't think he's, Trump received 100 million from Adelson's widow, so maybe Trump is as trapped as everybody else. I don't know. G-Bucks is moving, yay. 10Q. All right, I can't seem to get it. A new puppy. I need a new puppy. A new puppy. How come Israeli and Palestinians live in peace abroad? Edgware Road in London. Yeah, I used to, believe it or not, I used to live near Edgware. I lived, there's I can't remember the name. There's a church and nuns that live right there at, what's that execution site called? Oh God, the corner there. Let me think. I'm trying to remember anything I can give you. There was a Hyde Park Corner. I lived down from it, and our office was closer to that one tall building. I can almost remember the name of it, and the metro stop there. But right where the traffic came out from Hyde Park, our office was right in there. And I lived just down from it for 2 years. And I spent a lot of time on Edgware Road and around there. And you're right. It's not about what there's a lot of excuses. A certain segment of the right-wing population in Israel gives, in my opinion. Oh, they hate us. They're going to attack us. It's none of that. They just want the land. They're just taking the land. And they're taking the resources. And they're insatiable. It won't stop. Now, it may stop when they get, if you've ever seen the map, it may stop once they get that somehow they've perceived this map from a promise 3,000 years old, and they believe that God has asked them to slaughter people so they can have that land. I don't think that's how God is, but maybe it's just the Old Testament God versus the New Testament God. I don't know. I personally think it's the same God. Um, a segment of the Israeli government and military wants Gaza Strip, they want the West Bank, they want Lebanon, they want a big part of Egypt, they want a swath of Saudi Arabia, they want Jordan, they want Syria, they want the oil, the natural gas, and they want all the way over into Iraq. And they want us to fight a war with Iran. That's all it's about. The rest of it's just noise to win the argument. Their goal is that settlements and resources and to create a nation. I think it's the only nation in the world that would be based on one religion, one people. I can't imagine how we'd react to France saying that, or Germany saying that, or Sweden saying that. But it's okay with them. I was entitled. Oh, there he is. I was entitled to one share of Nextbridge. I was one of the original 60,000 shares holders of MMTLP. That was the 185 million shares. When they started trading again, how could they be entitled to a share? Well, I guess you're on John Berta's side, and maybe George Pelicanos' side, that MMTLP never should have been allowed to trade. The criminals are trapped in a major short position, and they forged documents. I mean, that used to be called things like wire fraud. It used to be called a lot of things that would put you in jail. The SEC approved the trading, and FINRA, the trading of that vehicle. So it's that approval that allows people to have a right. FINRA made their ruling, the stock traded, and so you're a purist. You want everything unwound back to MMTLP not trading because it was fraudulently allowed to trade. Well, I mean, that's one solution. But I don't know how you go back and unwind all the trading in MMTLP since then. But in a perfect world, you'd have computers that could just reverse all the trades in MMTLP from $0 to $12, millions and millions of shares, just reverse them all. Return the money to people that paid and go back to zero, which is the stock should never have been allowed to trade. But I think you're going to find out that it's not unusual that these criminals get shares trading. It's not unusual that from offshore they sell one share in the Chicago options market or somewhere like that. And then once that trades, they can sell as many non-existent shares as they want. So what you're asking for is for the system, the banksters, to come clean and in this one case reverse everything, because the SEC and FINRA should never have allowed MMTLP to trade. It's a big ask. I don't think they're going to do that. I like your thought. It's a very pure thought. It's a very pure thought, you know. I'd like to go back to the time when, you know, body counts were less than 100. But can you? You can't really. I don't know how you go back. I don't know how you unwind it. So that'd be how you do it, though. You'd have to have all the trades unwound, money returned to the buyers. And it might not be as big as you think. It might net out. But if you believe the numbers, and I don't know what to believe, there's 1 billion counterfeit shares of MMTLP sold since FINRA and SEC allowed it to trade. 1 billion. Are you going to unwind all of those? Just put a number on it. Let's say the average those were purchased for $5. $5 billion, who's going to pay for that? You just have to go back and penalize and get people to disgorge the money they received for selling the stock. It's a real hornet's nest. But anyway, that's what you're asking for, is the purism. You're an idealist, which I admire. But I don't know how they can come up with a mechanism to unwind possibly as many as 2.5 billion shares counterfeit, or even 600 million. I don't know the mechanism. The other way to do it is not unwind everything. And then, because you were one of the original holders, sort of get the data for who was the original holders, and then go back and say only original holders get NextBridge shares. So you'd have to delete the FINRA and SEC rulings, and then you'd be back in the same boat. You'd have to unwind all these trades. People bought trades on false premises. The value wasn't there, the lawsuits. I don't think that's going to happen either. And then what I would argue with you is people, and you can do it right now. I don't know why you're sitting trying to prove this point. For free. For the cost of a FedEx overnight, you can move your shares and make this question moot. But anyway, what I would argue with you is a lot of people in good faith bought MMTLP for what it offered them. And they may have traded for a profit, or maybe they wanted to hold on for NextBridge. Maybe they were holding on for the short squeeze. I don't know how you tell them that their trades were invalid. I don't know how you do that. I see what you're saying, but I just don't think it's practical. The scum's whole plan was to exterminate MMAT and use any methods possible. Infiltrate the BOD, forge documents, get rid of their liability and torch. I agree with you, Kit. And it is frozen in time. I wish people would move their shares just to help Greg, but that was a debate that Double D successfully got into people's head. And people are wanting to win the argument, but to me, I'm like, give me my shares. And I have my shares. And I don't think they can take them away. But was it called Langston? The big hotel, the big tower? I lived at Bryanston Street behind the police station. We lived on Hyde Park corner. And what was our street called? We were 2 Hyde Park. 2 Hyde Park is my memory of the address. 2 Hyde Park. Okay. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. G-Buck's going bam. I think that's great. Let me look. Djokovic comes on at 245. So I'd probably sign off by then. G-Bucks 340. And this was a ham recommendation, 340. I see 362 to 367, Benjamin. I see 362 bid, 367. If I go to NASDAQ, maybe I can get real-time quote. Let me see. It doesn't give me, oh, there it goes. May not give me any quote at all, but yeah, it's going, Benjamin. Um, 340, I see. I don't know if that's real time. The whole saga is so big and lengthy of fraud. MBH is just a wait, relax. This is going to be the tastiest cherry you ever had. Yeah, I think you're right. I everything froze, so I turned my computer off and back on. I was gonna the other day. Let me just see if it's here. This was a couple of weeks ago. I was going to give you my question about Iran. But let's see. I don't know if I can find it quickly. There, 298. 298. All right. It's only a page and a half. Well, maybe it's 2 pages on Iran. And I have this theory, which could be wrong, but if you believe, as I do, that the easily accessible oil may have peaked in the Middle East years ago, why wouldn't it be possible that Iran is building? I know this is anathema, and if I'm wrong, please forgive me, but why wouldn't it be possible that Iran has built its nuclear technology for exactly what it says, for power, so they can ship oil, sell oil? That's what they sell to the world. But anyway, I could be wrong, but it's in that context. This is from Matt Simmons' book, Twilight in the Desert, Oil in Iran. It won't take long. But I do try to force feed you guys that your world is going to be different. And I think the trigger is going to be oil, but it could be any number of things, but it all comes back. We've lived magnificently because of oil. Iran's giant oil fields provide the first Middle East examples of the largest oil fields in the regions. Are they immune to the aging phenomena? Almost all of Iran's giant fields peaked long ago. And this book was written 20 years ago because most of the fields lacked underlying aquifers reservoir pressure was supplied by gas and the presence of the initial gas caps. Gas reinjection programs were introduced in the early 1970s to help keep reservoir pressures high. 4 supergiant oil fields in Iran were discovered between 1936 and 1963. These 4 fields are comparable in size to all of the Saudi Arabian supergiant fields except the King of Kings, Garwar. So one is Gach Saran with an estimated 49 billion barrels of original oil in place, discovered in 1937. Marun with 47 billion barrels original oil in place, discovered in 1963. Agajari with 28 billion barrels of original oil in place, discovered in 1936. Awaz, 28 billion barrels, discovered in 1958. Cuba has been around for fewer years than the Awaz field. Together, these 4 supergiants accounted for 153 billion barrels of Iran's original oil in place. That's a lot. During the years of their highest output, these 4 oil fields produced collectively 4.5 million barrels a day. The Aghajari peaked in 1973. The Gaksaran peaked in 1974, the Marran in 1967, and the Awaz in 1977. Everything peaked with the fat Elvis, I'm telling you. All peaked well before political turmoil began unraveling Iran's oil and gas operations. By 2003, these 4 fields collectively produced less than 1.7 million barrels a day, although they still account for half of Iran's daily output. So they were producing at the peak 4.5 million barrels a day. They now, 20 years ago, were producing at 1.7. The National Iranian Oil Company is now embarking on a multi-billion-dollar gas injection program. This is sweeping the fields for the last oil we know how to get out. Maybe they could do a water flood, but I think gas will get everything that a water flood would, but I'm not a reservoir engineer. So they're going to do gas injection to stabilize or boost production from these aging fields using the enormous gas reserves in the South Pars field. They're probably selling the gas now. It is hoped that this expensive program will boost each field's output. Agajari, for instance, is now producing about 100 to 150,000 barrels a day. They're hoping to increase it to 300 barrels a day through the injection of 2 billion cubic feet of gas per day, assuming it works. Iran's oil history provides prima facie evidence of how fast a nation's oil production can fall after it peaks. Iran's 4 great fields all peaked between the Beatles and Elvis Presley, when Iran, like Saudi Arabia, continually boosted its oil production to meet soaring global demand. By 1978, Iran's peak oil output was about 6 million barrels a day. That was their peak. Because of the political turmoil, Iran's production plummeted in 1981 and stayed low for a couple of years. But after everything stabilized, the country was never able to return to its previous oil production. They weren't even able to return to 2/3 of their peak output. Iran is now seeking Western oil firms to help rehabilitate old fields. And they'd like to get their oil capacity from 4 billion barrels a day to 4.2 million by 2005. And he describes one that's heavy oil. It's not very much oil either, comparatively. Iran's post-peak projects offer proof that oil left behind is not oil which will ever be recovered. However, the recovery projects are expensive and sometimes do not work as planned. Occasionally, giant oil fields can experience a second life through massive investment. These cases, though, are exceptions. Virtually all giant fields decline irreversibly once their production peaks. A Saudi oil optimist, wishing to dodge the eventuality suggested by the histories of other giant fields, can still argue that none of these case studies, even the Iranian fields, provide a valid comparison to Saudi oil fields. Then he goes on to talk about Oman's giant Yabal field. Anyway, let's leave it there. My point is, these fields have been around a long time, and we're counting on the future of civilization on fields that are 80 years old and in some cases 90 years old. Yeah, I like Indo very much, Kit. I think Indo is a good play. And I like that you only have 12 stocks because you can't really follow too many more. What I like about Indo that I remember, I saw a presentation, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Indo is owned by a small, relatively small oil and gas company with talent. But the upside is a major project with reserve size that an Exxon would like, or a Chevron, or a Royal Dutch Shell. It's big upside at Indo. I like that one. Yeah, I mean, whether he had the numbers screwed up, his point's still the same. He is a purist, and he thinks because MMTLP started trading on fraudulent grounds, they should just say none of that trading ever happened and let the original shareholders get the shares of Nexbridge. It's just not practical. It's pure, but it's just not practical. It would open. Look, it's the whole thing's a nightmare, and there's costs and damage and cheating and crimes and everything, but it would just compound the harm done. And so I think what will end up happening, if it ever can be proven out, people who were those original holders will be compensated with cash. They could go get the shares right now, but they'll be compensated with cash. It should this ever prevail in court. Wow. Let's find that story. Trump makes stunning promise to NASA astronauts. President Trump has promised to personally take care of Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore. Trump was asked about reports the pair would receive no overtime, to which he replied, "Nobody's ever mentioned this to me. If I have to, I'll pay it out of my own pocket. I'll take care of it." The payout would be tacked onto their annual salaries. That's great. That's great. That's great. All right, it's 2:22. At 2:45, I'm going to try to watch Djokovic because I need something to take my mind off my life. We're all tested in many ways. I should make a list of things I want to talk about because by the time I get through, I forget everything I wanted to talk about. I like this article posted today by Martin Armstrong. It takes 3 minutes to read. It's called Sovereign Debt Crisis Unfolding. This is Martin Armstrong. I have been warning that we are approaching World War III. That's what I think. I think we are not going to let our financial system go down without war. So let me start again. I have been warning that we are approaching World War III as a distraction from the collapse of sovereign debt, government debt in Japan and Europe. The total outstanding government and corporate bonds globally have now exceeded $100 trillion in 2024, as reported by the OECD. As I have also been warning, central banks have been neutered. That sounds painful. They can no longer fight inflation by raising rates because government debt just explodes. Governments have no intention of ever paying off their debt. They think there is no end to this game. This is this woman, forget her name, this modern monetary theory woman. It's also Dick Cheney and Ben Bernanke, but that we can just keep printing money and create wealth by printing paper. COVID pushed most governments off the edge. You have the World Economic Forum pushing for lockdowns as being wonderful, but they were really about keeping people home and stopping their commuting to work to stop climate change. Interesting. In the process, they undermined commercial real estate and sent debt levels soaring for the entire planet. Then you have the Greens in Europe cheering World War III to destroy Russia because they are the biggest producer of fossil fuels. So we now risk a nuclear war in order to save the planet? This is like someone punching you in the face first and calling it self-defense because they knew you wanted to hit them first. They had two idiots listening to this nonsense. Biden, who would have asked if we get enough of the bastards to save the planet. And King Charles, who seems to be thoroughly brainwashed into the green movement. I don't know what he meant there. While central banks are cutting interest rates, borrowing costs remain much higher than before 2022's rate hikes because the ECM in particular went to negative interest rates in 2014, which only encouraged governments to issue more debt. This all comes at a time when the EU wants to fund an army and prepare for war as a distraction from their inevitable collapse by 2029. Do you hear that? The EU, the collapse. In Germany, Merz refused to form a normal government with the number 2 party. Instead, he chose to bring in the 2 parties that wanted war, who were voted out. She said, quote, "The corks are popping among the election losers, the SPD and the Greens. And accordingly, this is the death knell for the euro." Merz has abandoned the debt restraint of Germany to retain power. Germany is heading into very serious debt crisis for 20 through 26. And this does not bode well for Europe or the euro. Nearly half of all outstanding government debt among OECD countries and emerging markets, and around 1/3 of corporate debt will mature by 2027. Whew. Our computer is showing panic cycles in 2026 around the globe. So that gives us a year. That gives us a year to get ready. Panic cycles in 2026. The defaults will come when you cannot sell the new debt to pay off the old debt. There are people who are repeating our forecasts, pretending these forecasts are theirs. Nobody on a human level can possibly account for all the variables around the world. That cannot be done except by the only fully functioning AI system that has discovered the secret of time. No individual has the track record to back up their statements. This is not about I think nonsense. It's not my personal dream to have to live through my own computer's forecasts. He's got this AI system called Socrates. They think they can be in the limelight pretending these are their forecasts, but they are ill-equipped to actually see how and when this unfolds. On top of all these, many emerging markets, including China and even Canada, are issuing debt denominated in United States dollars. The older issues have also lost on the foreign exchange. Carney in Canada has just demonstrated his true lack of understanding of the financial markets. He dumped US Treasuries, but then issued Canadian debt denominated in dollars. As the loonie declines, he will lose on the return of the foreign exchange as well. Even the OEC report found that the cost of borrowing through the dollar-denominated bonds had risen from 4% to more than 6%, and rising to more than 8% for riskier junk rated economic nations. The funding of net zero projects has been a huge loss. The OECD said funding the net zero emissions would face a $10 trillion shortfall to meet Paris Climate Agreement goals by 2050. There is no way that they can fund this. Plus, World War III, the way they can fund this and World War III, they never consider that everything is coming to the point of a major sovereign debt default and that the government will not survive. Add trade wars, and what our model shows is a major recession globally into 2028. It is hard to see how many countries can even make it into 2029. How's that for a positive? How's that for a positive? Ham had a call. You can go listen to the recording. So he didn't come on. Rail, I can't really get a chart on because of the chart service I use. Railtown printed at a penny, so it just looks like one broad bar. But NIX looks great on the charts. I haven't looked at Next Strip. I'll have to look at that. And GDC looks great on the charts too. I know you don't like compliments. I'm not the best at compliments. And I don't FFC for them, fishing for compliments, as my sister used to call it. You see good things coming my way. Yeah, I see something I got to deal with tonight, this afternoon, and then make it through to Monday. Rail holding nicely. But thank you very much. So now what? This is interesting. Let me see if it's boring. Yeah, it's a long article. I won't bore you with it. Maybe next time we can talk about it. But the argument is that China's electric vehicles pose a real threat to Tesla. And I think that's possibly true because even though China has a lot of problems, there's somebody else that I follow. I don't know what her financial bona fides are, but she says BYD, I think that's the Chinese electric manufacturer, vehicle manufacturer, is really it's in trouble. So I don't know what to think, but they do have these modern factories and they produce cars at a relatively inexpensive price. But anyway, I'm going to skip that article because I think it could be boring and it'd take too long. I want to watch Djokovic. German debt bonanza blows up pigs' yields. Oh my gosh. Boeing will build the United States Air Force's next generation stealth fighter jet. Yeah, they got to rescue Boeing. They can't build a commercial jet, apparently. Well, they can, but to save money, they did that Max Jet 10 stretch that, oh my gosh. Retail army piles into Tesla at record-breaking pace. Burgum orders nearly 20 million acres in Alaska open for oil and gas development. The imminent restructuring of the monetary system. Let me see what that says. He's calling for a new Bretton Woods with Bitcoin. I don't know what's happening. Nothing good is happening. All right, let me go to. It's not an article, but there's a video I want to listen to and then summarize for you. But Rick Rule is calling for silver to squeeze and silver to be up 5,000%. Now, I don't know his duration of that call, but there's a lot of people now calling for silver squeeze. So we're running out of time. And I've made my peace with I'm going to miss the silver squeeze, even though it's something I've been studying for a long time. Wow. Is this Denver? Mississippi passed a bill today to eliminate the state income tax. Rickards it's sponsored content, but he's calling for trouble in the big 7 stocks. I'm seeing if I can find the headline from Rick Rule. Snow White bombs market. My prediction? Pain. The British still believe they run the world. I can't find it. All right. So let's see if you have any questions. Yeah, Ham had his own call. Wow, good for you. Your wife is smart, or is it you that's smart? You're a smart fella. I don't really have anything to take me for 5 more minutes because I want to go watch Djokovic. All right, I'll read this about ETFs. Exchange traded funds. are an easy way to buy price exposure to precious metals. I say price exposure because you are not buying precious metals. You are buying shares in a trust that owns precious metals, which gives you exposure to the price of those metals. The most popular are the iShares Silver Trust, SLV, and the Spider Gold Trust, GLD. But a close reading of the prospectuses for SLV and GLD raise questions. These documents state that despite the fund being designed precisely for the purpose of tracking the price of the underlying metal, they may not, in fact, do so. Under certain market conditions, the price of the ETF may diverge from the price of the underlying metals, and in fact, the price of the ETF could fall. That was enough for me to decide to steer well clear of them. If they're really gold and silver, how can they diverge from the price of gold and silver? The fund pays its annual expenses by selling off a portion of its underlying asset. So your holding is being devalued a little bit each year. Finally, if the trust had problems and failed, I would become an unsecured creditor of the trust, who must then file a claim to recover my value. But any value remaining in the trust is shared with all the other claimants. Claim my share or share my claim? No thanks. I'll pass. We'll start talking about mining shares. We'll start talking about that. All right, so it's 2:42. I'm going to say goodbye. Let's see what you're saying. I still don't understand how you can call a squeeze in silver, but say I've already missed it. Oh, I think the squeeze is going to happen very soon. And I don't have the money to buy back the silver I used to have. That's what I mean. I think there's a possibility. I think there's two ways forward for silver. One is that I think as the markets rally, which I think they will, I could be wrong, in this last paroxysm of optimism, I think silver's going to go to $90, $100, $120, something like that. That could happen by September. It could happen by January. I don't know. But then there'll be a pullback in that scenario, because I think the markets, like the roadrunner running out, in the thin air, or the wolf or whatever, the coyote, will look down and just hit. I think the Dow could go to, I don't know, 65,000 in this massive rally, 70 even, I don't know. But when it collapses, I think it could come down 15, 20,000 in a day. And it's just going to be frightening. And in that scenario, people are going to sell everything, and silver will pull back. My opinion, which is different from some of these really smart people, I don't think silver will pull back below sort of the breakout point, $50, $52. That's the all-time high in silver, $52, all-time high. Nominal high, not even adjusting for inflation. When it breaks through that, boom, it's going to be the headline everywhere in the world. It's going to be bigger than Bitcoin, bigger than Renee Zellweger in Snow White. That's one way, and that's the most likely way that silver's going to go. But what I'm sensing, and I've said this in many of my disquisitions. I think silver uniquely, more than gold, faces a physical default which they cannot hide. I think it will happen in London, or could happen in London, and I'm just going by memory. Annual mine production of silver is something like 800 million ounces, might be a little bit more. Daily trading in silver paper is 800 million, sometimes double that, triple that. It's all fake, just like what you're going through in this stock market. But gold, the price has gone up. So in India, China, even in Russia, banks and civilians are buying silver. Here in the West, we don't own gold. Less than 0.5% of our financial assets are in gold. I read you an article the other day. The decline in the price of NVIDIA this year is larger than the holdings of gold we have at Fort Knox, is what I read. I didn't study it myself. Adam, I forget who wrote it. I'm not going to get anybody in trouble since I'm quoting it from memory. But we don't own gold, and we really don't own silver. And silver is a tiny marketplace, tiny. So anyway, gold has been moving to Asia, been moving to the Middle East, been moving elsewhere, out of the Western markets. Fraudulent trading. There's 26 guys that fraudulently trade the precious metals on behalf of banks like JP Morgan, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and others, the bullion banks. It's all fraud. It's accepted because it's all designed for this handful of men at the very top. The rest of us are suckers. But China is developing an exchange in Shanghai that's physical only, no futures. And I think the Middle East is, and I'm sure Putin. Do you know Putin is PhD? Did you know that? He's a PhD in resource, primarily oil, but all resources. You don't think he knows these balances? His ruble was destroyed by the Western banks. And the giving of shares to the Russian public was all the design to concentrate wealth in the handful of a few oligarchs. And I will not point out their characteristic to you. I had a Russian girlfriend. She pointed it out to me. It never occurred to me. Never occurred to me. And where they're from. But once she pointed it out, I had to admit, you're right. So Putin, I think, would love to create honest exchanges. So there's going to be alternatives to the COMEX and the LBME, the London bullion markets. So that's coming. We're not there yet. Gold, I think, can still be manipulated because Trump can call, or his subordinates can call and say, lease this out, sell your gold. They can still, we can go take the gold. We took it from Gaddafi. We managed to get Venezuela selling it back. I don't know what happened to the Iraqi gold, but there's things we can do with gold. It's still there. Silver, on the other hand, yes, it's jewelry. Yes, there's some in reserve. There is something like, I think it's 300 million ounces, it might be 250 million ounces of silver in the float, so to speak, right now. But they're trading 800 million ounces and more every day. And the production of silver cannot be turned on like a tap. There just aren't many new mines in silver that you can suddenly ramp up production. So we're stuck with that limit of production maybe for the next few years. Obviously, higher prices brings supply on, it brings selling. So at some point, when silver is much higher, we might have more production. But for the foreseeable future, there's no source of silver to solve the problem with physical delivery. And I think silver could be, I think it's already in default. Gold is in default on the London exchange. But, so are your shares in MMTLP and MULN. And, they can handle that. But when it comes to physical, matching physical, and there isn't any left, and a lot of it's going out of the market, never to return, sitting in China, sitting in India, sitting in Russia. I think silver is setting up for fireworks, boy. I think it's going to be unlike anything you've seen in history, more so than gold, more so than gold. So that's what I talk about. I'm afraid I'm going to miss that. On the other hand, you just got to go with the markets as they present. If my first scenario is correct, what you should be doing is buying, just to use a number, you buy 300 ounces of silver now, under 40. And when silver runs to 90 or 100 or 120, maybe it'll be clear. All right, you sell a third of it. And if it pulls back to 50 or 60, you buy more, or you just buy back that position and keep the profit. And then you reestablish your 300 ounces. But I think silver is going to be repriced both in its ratio with gold. I think gold's going to, some bank just came out and said gold's going to 3,200. That's a brave call. Wow. I think it could go to 5,000 very quickly. But from 3,000, let's say gold goes to 6,000 very quickly, which is a big number. I'm not talking about a financial reset. I'm just saying it runs. I'm not sure it'll go to 6, but let's just say it does. That's a double in your money. That's a double. Silver from here, you can stick with the ratio silver currently has, which is roughly 90 to 1, might be now 80 to 1 to gold. Or you can just look at the prices. Right now, silver's $40, gold's 3,000. If gold goes to 6,000, I'm making that up, of course, silver goes to 80. But what really happens? What really happens is gold gets more expensive. People turn to the poor man's gold. And that ratio of whatever it actually is, 90 to 1, goes to 50-50. I think it's going to go to 20 to 1, 16 to 1. And I think ultimately silver will trade maybe for more than gold, but it'll go 1 for 1 in a spike. I'm not saying forever. And look, I'm not saying you hold on silver forever, but you might hold on to it for 6 years. I don't know. But we should talk about that. Right now, I don't know let me look up the median house price. I don't know where you live. Median house price in Pretoria. Is that how you spell that? Pretoria. All right, Pretoria. The median house price in Pretoria. What? That's South Africa? What's that place that everyone? All right, let me pick median house price in Goshen. I'm just trying to find a place in America. All right. The median home price in Goshen, Indiana is $232,000. All right. $232,000 in Goshen. Silver right now is $33. So it costs you 7,000 ounces of silver, approximately, a little bit more, 7,000 ounces of silver to buy a median home in Goshen right now. So that's $232,000 for a median home in Goshen, Indiana, or Illinois, or wherever the hell in the middle of the country. All right, so if we go into a recession, if the currency comes down and home prices go into stagflation, let's say that the home price in Goshen, the median, let's say it goes to 250,000, but silver goes to 500 an ounce. Instead of costing 7,000 ounces of silver to buy a median home in Goshen, Illinois, or Indiana, I forget which, let me look. Indiana, it would only cost you one monster box to buy a median priced home in Goshen, Indiana. Of course, then you'd have to live in Goshen, Indiana. But that's my point. There'll come a time when the price of silver will buy a home for you for very little. Or it'll buy you a car, or it'll buy you an apple orchard, or it'll buy you a farm with a flowing stream on it, or it'll buy you waterfront property, or it'll, that's what I'm talking about. NWB. I think what's going to happen with Northwest Bio, the only way out for investors, and it's on my list if I ever have money to buy some shares, is that it's purchased. And of course, if you have one buyer, then it's a nightmare negotiation. Well, your stock's only trading for 25 cents. We'll give you. But if you have two buyers, because it's such a great product, and I think that's what'll happen, you get $30, $40, $80 a share, could be more in a buyout. And then you don't worry about a short squeeze. I went out and bought 6 ounces of silver for a couple of hundred. Unbelievable. I think about that all the time. The other night, last week, one example, after Mass, I sat at an Ethiopian restaurant. I was the only native-born American in the place, but as far as I could tell. But it was great. They have music on, they have football on, and I had my Ethiopian food. But I don't think it was $30. I think it was $28. But it's basically an ounce of silver. So you start thinking, I just spent an ounce of silver that someday could be worth $5,000. Drive you crazy. What's that quote you cited? I don't remember that quote. Where? Let me see if it's here. A young guy like you is going to make a lot of money. A young guy like you is going to make a lot of money. I love this guy, Andy Schechtman. Miles Franklin started his company with his father in 1989. And they started with $60,000 in 1989. They've done $6 billion in gross sales as of 4 years ago, without a single customer complaint. Well, that's what I brought up, by the way. When I was talking about where to store silver. One thing about Miles Franklin, they're based in the state of Minnesota. Anyway, I thought it said something else. Minnesota makes them be licensed, bonded, and checked out. All right, let me see if I can. I don't know where to find that quote. Was it Ted Butler that said it? I'll try to find it. Galadon. But that's right. If silver mining were to stop today, the world would run out of silver within 3 to 6 months. What I understand is there's something like 250 to 300 million ounces of silver in the free float, so to speak. The world produces 800 to 850 million ounces a year and consumes that pretty much. Now, if production stopped, prices would go up. So you'd have to calculate, and I'm sure computers can do this, how much new silver supply would come out of people's kitchen and attics, and how much buying would come in from individuals, investors. So that would offset. But obviously, if the world is producing 850 million ounces a year, it's producing about 75 million ounces a month. And if production for some reason were to stop, I mean, it's just a mental exercise, and there's, call it 300 million ounces in the available float on the exchanges. Other than the exchange warehouses, I don't know of any other above ground stack of silver anymore. The United States used to have one. Obviously, people wear it around their necks. They might want to sell it, but other people want to buy. So let's treat that as offsetting. So if there's 300 million available, I mean, I think you know the answer, where it's 4 months supply. But I don't think you even need such a dramatic thing. All you need is for India, Asia, and Russia to ask for delivery of 300 million ounces of silver, and all of a sudden we're we're going month to month, production versus demand, and that's a high wire act. Anyway, that's how I see it. Costco will let you buy 100 ounce a day. Well, that's a good reason to join Costco. Charlie Munger's favorite. It's online, but Warren Buffett tells a story about how Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger were on a hijacked plane. The plane they were on was hijacked, and the hijackers came to them and said, "Do you have a last wish before you die?" And Charlie Munger apparently said, "Yes, I'd like to present to you my Costco story with the PowerPoint and with graphs and a detailed presentation." And the hijacker said, "Okay, we can allow for that." He had his computer with him, and then he turns to Warren Buffett, and the hijacker said to Warren, "What's your last request?" And Warren Buffett said, "Shoot me first." Anyway, that's Costco. All right, I'm going to go watch Novak Djokovic. Thank you for tuning in. Peace, love, and happiness, and peace around the world.